afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of What the Why with Barbara Ann on RVN Television. If you haven't seen us before, our show features conversations with diverse leaders from all walks of life about why they do what they do and how they figured things out. Maybe you're sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, or you want to get unstuck from business, your life, your relationships, whatever. All of our guests have something in common with you. At some point in their lives, they felt similarly, and they decided to do something about it. And today is no exception. This one's cool. Not that they aren't all cool, but this one's cool. So please join me in welcoming Henry Wong, brand strategist, creative director, designer, writer, and president and brand strategist of View, a branding and content company he founded that focuses on impact for companies, currently based in Toronto. Henry is the author of the recently published book, Telling Your Story, Building Your Brand, by Business Expert Press, a book on personal branding for business leaders, entrepreneurs, and people looking to advance their careers. With his other book, What Would Harold Do?, he has interviewed over 100 owners on success. Suffice to say, Henry's branding and marketing roots span over 25 years in senior positions in the advertising industry. He first began his career as a business writer, contributing to publications such as the Toronto Star, Financial Post, and other publications before he migrated to advertising. And his thought leadership includes the Toronto Star, National Post, Financial Post, Globe and Mail, Ad Age. He's also applied his award-winning mindset to clients such as CTV, Toyota, J&J, and Procter & Gamble, and Henry has assisted startups and mid-tier companies build their brand. He's also guided organizations such as the Canadian Mental Health Association, Institute of Medical Sciences, and the Ontario Brain Institute, along as serving as a personal brand guru to politicians, professional athletes, and company leaders. And his awards include awards from Creativity, Clio, Marketing, and more. And to top it all off, he serves on advisory boards and family foundations, and has even served in roles with mid-growth startups, including consumer food products and tech and wellness companies. So you heard a lot about Canadian names, brands, entities. Suffice to say, Henry is joining us live via Zoom from Toronto, and I've been really looking forward to this conversation. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Henry Wong of View to our
Exactly.
Okay, awesome.
You're probably one in a million who've gotten it right, so thank you.
You're welcome. So now, after reading all of that, the first question we always like to ask our guests is, we don't imagine that little Henry thought he was going to be doing all of these amazing things when he was growing up. So what did you want to be when you were little?
I wanted to be everything and all things, and I think it was prompted by my father, who pushed me to anything entrepreneurial. So if I wanted to be an architect, he thought, oh, we could get an office space for you. If I wanted to be a photographer, oh, we could set up the house for a studio. So it was that sort of encouragement that I had from the very beginning that I think shaped a lot of my sensitivity and empathy towards business owners.
Wow. So you were very entrepreneurial as a child. How did you get from where you were then to being the brand guru and strategist that you are now?
Well, that's quite interesting, because as with many parents, they tend to steer you towards the more hardcore types of subjects like math, sciences, and I did quite well in it. But the one thing I couldn't do well in was English, partly because it was my second language at the time. And I remember one English class cheating on a poetry test, and the teacher found me out and sat me down and said, you're actually able to write, and if you spent some time, you could really grow that ability. So she gave me a second chance, and I was able to put pen to paper, and I really found a love of being creative. So as I went on into my career, I found that I could actually make money coming up with ideas. So all those years of watching television, all those years of looking at ads suddenly became the impetus for me to enter the advertising world. So within that, it really is a type of environment environment that allows you to succeed if you can do well and you work hard. And fortunately, I seem to have the right ability to come up with campaigns. And from there, I just began learning, and I began focusing on different companies and different types of brands. I had the privilege of guiding Toyota. I had the privilege of guiding P&G and J&J, and that became a lot of the discipline that I now apply to the businesses that I help with my own company.
Wow. Now, brand strategist can mean so many things. What is it that you specifically do with, because you work with a lot of different types of companies. Even, as I mentioned, some of the nonprofit work that you do on a pro bono basis. So how do you assist these companies with their branding?
Quite often, many of these brands or companies are looking for their place in the marketplace. They're trying to find their position in amongst the competition. So whether you're not-for-profit, whether you're selling cars or aspirin, you're really looking to stand out, be different, be more better than most of the companies out there. So that positioning is very fundamental to determining how you can sit in amongst everybody else. So through the years, I began working on a methodology, and I seemed to determine that it could also apply to people as well as it does to brands. So first and foremost, figuring out what you stand for and how you fit in the marketplace. From there, you can grow and build your story. So there's an entire methodology and process that I outline in my book that can help both companies and people with a guide to getting to the essence of what their story is. Because ultimately, I thought many years ago that the story, the idea, was often the conduit to getting people to pay attention. And I found that at a very young age, when I worked at my parents' restaurant, to exacting campaigns for big brands.
Oh, wow. It's interesting that you discovered that path. What was it about helping businesses and companies identify their brand that appealed so much to, because you're truly passionate, you can feel it, you can see it. What was it about that called you?
I think it was, if I were to share my sort of background secrets, I entered the business from a creative point of view, but I also realized that I had to rationalize ideas. I couldn't simply come to a meeting and go, oh, here's a great idea, and hope they would like it. You really do need a very logical, linear, strategic approach to getting to that idea. So by being able to deconstruct it and analyze it and then present it back, I found a huge amount of success in my own career. But more importantly, I think for many of the brands and the companies hiring me, they could see there was a logical path to that. So I think for me, intellectually, it allows me to apply both my left and right brain together in one sort of solution. And that's what I really love about it, being able to solve problems for people, being able to find that intellectual solution to what might ail them in the marketplace.
Now, there's many ways to do that, but you had the courage to take that entrepreneurial leap. So where did you find the courage to pursue that, as well as then help others figure out how to do it for themselves?
That's very kind of you to say courage, but I would say it's a little bit more the fact that, and I think many entrepreneurs find this true themselves. They really don't enjoy working for other people. They enjoy being able to lead a company, lead with their own ideas, taking a little bit of a risk that perhaps a larger organization wouldn't be able to do. So for that, I think it was in many ways an easy way to begin to follow that path. I could control my destiny, and I've always believed that you in the end can control the outcome with the right tools, the right thinking, the right team behind you.
Yeah, and you're right. But on the coaching side of it, I get to see the ones that are so afraid of change that the fear of staying the same just hasn't gotten bad enough for them to move forward. And you've worked with so many different entities that have really been willing to move forward. What would you say are a couple of the things that most contributed to how you got to where you are now?
I think it's just purely lack of sleep.
That's honest.
In
Yep.
my, what little success I've had in my career was simply because I seem to work harder than everybody else, but it wasn't because I was necessarily smarter, but I just seem to work harder. So by staying up later, by compromising my sleep, I could put in those extra hours. And I think time and time again, as, particularly within the ad agency world where it was super competitive, you would often be competing with your own peers for the best idea. And I found that if I could generate more ideas, I had more options to choose from. And so that's the same principles I apply as I started my business. As I began working a little bit harder, I found that more people were attracted to my company as a result, looking for the solution. As I got better and perhaps smarter as I got older, I just began working a little bit more intelligently. And I think there's a few things that many of your viewers can certainly identify with in terms of just working smarter, not necessarily harder. And when you're young, you know nothing better than to simply work harder, but finding some of the shortcuts as you get older and more experienced, and this is where it comes from, allows you to work a little bit more smartly.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that because you're a very fit person and you seem to have found a level of a work-life balance. Yes, for those of us who are in this entrepreneurial landscape, it is different. But you make time for yourself. How did you make that leap from the younger person who just work, to the person you are now that has figured out what work smarter actually means?
I think it's defining a certain amount of time, and I tend to think in terms of time blocks. So if there's an hour spent on working out a strategy, the next hour working on the creative aspect of it, maybe 1 hour on admin, my life is carved into 1 hour increments. So allowing myself an hour to fit in, let's say, a workout, a bike ride, heading to the calisthenic park, any of that is fundamental. And I think for many of the entrepreneurs listening, those who have embarked on the fitness side of it, it is really a key ingredient to keeping you functioning. I don't think I could ever work as many hours as I did if I didn't stay healthy and fit enough. The opposite would be true. You would just simply collapse. So I think that outlet is fundamental to success for everybody.
Yeah, so true. I've actually implemented a routine where I'm now running my dogs every morning. Because other things are getting in the way of things I would normally do. So there was a level of selfishness behind that question as well.
But in the end, don't you find it benefits everyone?
Oh, of course.
So by being the best you can contribute to those who rely on you and those who may need your input, certainly for success.
Exactly. And so many entrepreneurs believe that they have to grind 24/7. I mean, and there's some truth. I used to joke that, entrepreneurship, running your own business, is leaving a 5, maybe 6 day a week set hour schedule for working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Because you're never really truly off when you own it.
Another shortcut I found, and I think many people have come to understand that, but maybe more intuitively than to set out things, and that is really finding business mentors, people who have maybe come before you with a certain amount of knowledge. We're very lucky in this day and age to have so much content available, podcasts, books, YouTube videos, all with people with certainly experience and ideas who are willing to share. What you're doing here is terrific, of course, because you're sharing knowledge with people, with all the different guests that you have on that allow them to share a lot of their insights. But, me growing up in the business, I found just having people who were more senior than me taking the time to show me the ropes, to teach me a little bit, and picking up little bits here or there as I went along. Even when I started my own business, I was very lucky that I had a senior partner in the beginning who was able to teach me the fundamentals of business and other things. So all of that combined together, I think, can help accelerate success. I think people wiser than me have said, learn from the mistakes of others. You can't possibly make enough in your own lifetime to succeed.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you raised the mentorship, because I know in my case, and I suspect yours and many of our viewers, part of what we're finding is that people are really looking to more and more mentors who look like them. Representation matters, so to speak. So, and here you are. I mean, you are a living example of that. Believe it or not, we're at break time. So when we come back, I want to ask you about your book and delve a little bit more into some of those lessons learned. So viewers, please come back after this break with our commercial sponsors for more with Henry Wong on What the Why.
There's an old
Welcome back to What the Why with Barbara Ann, and today's very special guest joining me all the way from Canada, Henry Wong, branch strategist of View. And before the break, we were talking about the importance of finding mentors and people that can help you. And one of the added benefits is more and more people really benefit and actively are looking for people who, in some instances, look nothing like them because they're looking for that diverse perspective, and in other instances, represent them because representation does matter. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Sorry, you're referring to mentorship, of course.
Yeah.
So I think there exists in many quarters, many business organizations, a formal type of mentorship where they often will buddy system you with somebody senior. I think for many entrepreneurs who go off on their own, they don't really have that catch net. They don't have that system. What I have always encouraged people is to go out and seek those people. And it's amazing the number of people at senior levels who will make the time for you. They've gone through a lot themselves. They have a lot of insights. They've learned much that they can often share. And it's often a compliment. So I learned from other mentors that they had ones before them. And it was very easy for them to set up because in a way you are appealing to someone's, I guess, for lack of a better word, own ego when you reach out to them and say, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Could you give me 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes for a coffee? I'd love to hear your perspective on this. And it could be a total stranger. It could be someone you just met recently. It could be someone you met many years ago. But being able to draw from this level of experience, I find so invaluable and much more than simply picking up a book. Mm-hmm. Even though I'm an author of one.
Yeah, which is interesting because that was the next thing I was going to ask you. So I'm like, let's segue into your book. So your recently published book, telling your story, building your brand. Tell us about that.
It really began as a COVID project. So a couple of years ago, as you recall, many cities were locked down. I seemed to have a little bit more time on the weekends to begin to put thoughts together. I was finding many people approaching me on the personal brand side. And unfortunately, because of the structure in which I exist, not everybody can afford the fees of an agency such as mine. So I began documenting and being able to articulate the process and methodology that I often use to put together. So that began to form quite easily the many chapters in the book. I was secondly fortunate again to be able to get a publisher who was very interested in it. The next thing I knew, I was completing a book, and here we are. So what it really represents is, in spite of my boyish looks, I have well over 25 years in the trenches of working in the business. So it represents a lot of the thinking over the years, set out in a step-by-step approach to exacting what your brand is and how to tell the story, from everything from pitching people to social media to even just chatting at a network session.
Mm-hmm. Which is really great advice. What would you say was your biggest learning experience over the course of your career?
I think many people try to create a brand, whether it's for a product or service or themselves, and quite often they're not true to who they are. And I learned a very fundamental phrase that I often keep at the back of my mind, and that is, to thine own self be true, which is quoting Shakespeare, of course. But what that means is that no matter what you manifest, whatever image you create, you really have to be true to yourself, because I think happiness really comes from being able to bring that out in the best form possible, as opposed to being something for someone else.
Okay, interesting. What's something you wish you had known before you started on this journey?
That it would probably take longer than I thought. So I again, what I said about mentorship is so true. I wish I had been less self-reliant and a little bit more open to maybe opening myself to other people's ideas. They could have given me lots of shortcuts along the way. I think when you're young and you're learning and you're growing, you kind of think as captain of your own enterprise that you can control the outcome, but so much of it can be really learned from other people. So what I wish I had learned earlier and what I would advise people is just take on those people who could help you get there faster.
And it's interesting, it's almost like with each question you're answering the one I would ask you next, because
It's my intuition, but thank you.
it is, that's got to be it. Because yes, there's a lot of people who think that they can go out and start a business. I see it all the time in what I do, and I'm sure you see the same. And so what would you recommend to people who are considering whether it's going into your industry in particular or even going into entrepreneurship?
Well, I think certainly entrepreneurship is, it's super satisfying for those who have gone that route. But many people simply want to start a business, and they go about it and may, take on the existing businesses. It's the way they end up exacting a certain amount of revenue and so forth. Sometimes something is missing along the route, and so quite often the companies I work with, the people I work with, I often go through an exercise of helping them determine what their purpose is. And quite often that is really fundamental to success because it's what drives you. If you have a reason for starting the company, and it can't just be about the money part of it, but what problem can you solve in the world? Well, how can I make someone else's life better? What is the passion that is driving me to do this? That informs a certain amount of purpose. And if you can wrap that around a entity in which the business can satisfy, I think that to me is the fundamental first step in gaining that success, because that's what keeps you motivated when things aren't going well. That's what keeps you motivated as things get a little bit darker and challenging. So by staying true to what your mission is and what your purpose is, and this maybe comes back to the theme of a lot of your content, Margaret, and the idea of what the why, because the why is often the purpose.
It's interesting because you pretty much just described my brand, because my company is literally purpose-filled solutions and evolutions, and what the why is the offshoot of that. So
it's so important, isn't it?
it is, because if I had $1 for every business owner who said, well, I want to make a lot of money, I'm like, but what do you really want to do? What are you passionate about? What's going to help you get up in the morning on the worst days when you know that something needs to be done? How are you going to stay motivated? And money is not the answer to that question, as I'm sure you know. But in addition to telling your story, building your brand, you also had another book, What Would Harold Do? So tell us a little bit about that, because it's an interesting title.
It is, so the book is now out of print, unfortunately, but I will give you a little bit of background because I think our viewers would enjoy this. It's actually based on a friend of mine who is named Harold. He runs a business, but he's always done the right thing ethically, and it was my inspiration to seek out other people like this. So the book itself was a collection of interviews of different business owners about starting up, about financing, working with family, how to create a succession plan. It was just their little tidbits of that. And for me, that was wonderful education and learning about how other businesses run. So through the years, even though I've had the opportunity to work on multiple types of business sectors, there's something quite engaging and wonderful about talking to people and their own personal journey and how to get there. And I have no doubt this is what drives your show as well, Margaret, that you love talking to people and hearing their story and seeing how they put it all together. So for me, it was very much the same thing. It was a labor of love, but at the same time, it was just a wonderful way to meet so many different entrepreneurs.
Yeah, no, What the Why with Barbara Ann, absolutely positively. Almost never happened because I was like, I've never been on this side of the mic, but it made sense. And interestingly, you may find yourself in a book someday because I've got all of these shows. I guess as we start to wind down, this sometimes can be a really tricky question, but if you were the one doing the interview, what question would you have asked that I did not?
I think everybody has an origin story, and Barbara Ann, I'd love to hear yours because you have a certain inspiration and quality to the way you present things, and I'd love to hear, perhaps another time how you got to this point. But for me myself, I guess what is my origin story? And unbeknownst to a lot of people, I actually grew up in the back of a Chinese restaurant, and it was only through that some of that adversity that I faced of new language, of being forced to work at a very young age, that I became the person I am, that I learned many things along the route to what bit of success I had. But a lot of it also helped me formed a lot of my storytelling and my pitching, because as I grew older, my parents forced me to the front of the house, and I began interacting with customers. And again, that was a wonderful education, and learning about human nature and learning about people and being able to engage with them at the same time.
Yeah, which is so wonderful that you had that experience. I know there's some people out there to be like, he did what? But you know what? Some of the most successful people are those young people who started out doing the hard work. My son included. Shout out to my son. So I guess my final question for you would be, and I kind of hinted on this earlier, but who, and it could be 2 or 3 people, would you say inspired you the most to succeed in what you've been doing? Because we've talked about mentors and things like that. So I'm curious if there's anyone you would like to give a shout out to before we wrap up.
I think, for many of us, those mentors are often definitely older figures in our life. I think certainly it would be my parents. My father had a wonderful way of looking at life, always optimistic, always cup half full. And I think that always inspired me to continue, because he went through a lot of business bumps as well, but he was very resilient and kept pushing on. I was fortunate enough to have one mentor who's since passed on from the old world of advertising. He was a true madman from those days, and learning about everything through him, Brian Skinner, was amazing. And then the last one was just someone who taught me that it was just logic, it was passion. And Raymond Lee, well celebrated ad person in his own right. And that helped me quite a bit in terms of shaping my career as I began to become my own person. So for those, you're standing on the shoulders of others, and I truly believe that that's the case.
Awesome. Well, Henry, thank you so much for being here. For those who would like to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
I have for the book and myself, henrywong.co. I can be connected there. You can find out more information about the book. No requirement to buy it, of course, to reach out to me. But certainly there is a terrific pathway to connecting by email and my other social platforms, of course.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your personal and professional journey with us. And all the way from Toronto. So thank you again.
It was a real pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, as for our upcoming guests, you really don't want to miss any of our conversations with them. Similar to Henry, they include leaders from all walks of life, such as other business owners and coaches and authors and technology experts, entrepreneurs, athletes, military veterans, and so many of them have overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges. Please tune in and learn and be inspired by how they did what they did and how you can do it too. And if you missed any of our past guests and you want to check them out, you can catch all of seasons 1, seasons 2, and now seasons 3 to date on the What the Why page of RVN Television's website. These days, you have so many viewing choices, So thank you very much for taking time to watch our show, and please tell a friend or colleague about us. And as a reminder, you can find us not just on rvntelevision.com, but also on Roku. Just look for the What the Why page. And also, whether you're looking to make changes in your life or your career or your company, or helping this along, please tune in again for more informational and enjoyable conversations with guests such as Henry, who overcame whatever may have been in their paths to figure out what their why and their purpose in life was and to live it.